And Ambassador Young said that upon his discussions, he invited the president to put a Hotel Nico in Atlanta, and a month later, they selected this parcel, which the hotel now stays. So we could go on and on and on for hours to let you know everything that Ambassador Young's done, but for now, I'll let him tell you that, and I just want to introduce my good friend, Ambassador Andrew Young.
Give it up again for Ambassador Young.
Let me start where you left off and go back. I have had a phenomenal life, and nobody ever figured that out, I don't think. Because I was born in New Orleans, and I was born in a rather poor neighborhood, but it was everybody's poor. There was an Irish grocery store on one corner, an Italian bar on another. The headquarters of the Nazi Party was on the third corner, and a Chevrolet repair shop was around the fourth corner. And I lived right dead smack in the middle. There were maybe 4 or 5 other black families in the block, but everybody else was mixed up. The only problem was my mom and daddy were the only ones that had children. So we were the only black kids in the neighborhood. And we had to get out of the neighborhood to go to another neighborhood to go to school, because schools were segregated. But when I look back, that was probably the best place in the world for me to be born, because I got to know everybody, and I had to get to the grocery store without getting beat up. I had to learn when to fight and when to talk. But better still, I had to learn that if you get along with everybody and you speak to people and you treat everybody nice, you don't have to fight. You get along with folk. And my daddy's motto was, don't get mad, get smart. And he took me to the movies. Movies were segregated then, so we had to go up in the balcony. But he took me to see Jesse Owens in the 1936 Olympics. And the 1936 Olympics, I was 4 years old. But the hardest thing about it was we had about 60 steps to step up to get to the balcony, where I could even get in to see the Olympics. And it was important because my daddy wanted me to see what Jesse Owens did when Hitler walked out on him. Hitler was, his theory was the master race. And that if you're white, you're right, if you're black, get back. And that's sort of what was on trial in those 36 Olympics. Well, it just turned out that Jesse Owens won the 100-meter dash and set the world record. Well, Hitler was supposed to give him a medal like the one you got around your neck, something, just a big Olympic medal. He got mad that Jesse Owens won, and he walked out. And he took all his army people with him. They were all dressed up in black shirts, black suits. You know, and that was just before World War II. And remember, the Nazi Party headquarters was 50 yards from where I lived. So, and there was a swastika flags flying there. And I had to go by there at least every day because my aunt lived in the next block. And that's where they used to send me when my mom and daddy had to go out and they didn't want me staying home alone. But that's a crazy place to grow up. But I learned to get along. And I learned that if you don't get mad and get smart, you'd be surprised how seldom you have to fight. That you can talk your way out, you can calm people down, you can reason with anybody if you can stay reasonable. And I think that's been sort of the key to the success of everything I've done. Stay cool. That's the way we used to say it. We were the cool generation. And I think that's why so many people in this room are successful. Because they realize that you could get mad and then you either had to whip or get whipped. But you could be cool and you didn't have to beat anybody and you didn't have to get beat by anybody. And you always knew that in that neighborhood you might beat somebody today, but 2 or 3 of them, the same kind of folk, might catch you in 2 or 3 days and you by yourself. You know about that. They say gangs are new, and but when I was at elementary school, they used to have zip guns. They'd make a gun out of a stick and a rubber band, and they'd put a hole in it and a nail tack on the end and pull a rubber back, and a gun, it could kill you. But so between the school and the neighborhood, I had to sort of get along with the whole world. Now, your troubles are your teachers. When you have trouble, whatever the trouble is, it teaches you something. And you don't have to do the same thing over again. You do the same thing, you're going to get the same trouble. But if you find out why you got trouble, like, I can't walk now. Nothing wrong with my legs. I was born with very good legs. I was on the swimming team and the track team in college. But I got here up in Sandy Springs, and I was late for a meeting downtown, and the elevator broke, and I was on the 16th floor, and I didn't want to be late downtown, and so I jumped down the steps, always leading with my left foot, and they wanted to fix my leg, cut it off and put a artificial knee joint in it. But I was afraid of that. And I figured that I would struggle with it because it didn't hurt. It's just not working right. But to make it work right, a doctor would have to put me to sleep. And see, this was almost 25 years ago. If I had done it back then, I didn't know what it was going to do to my mind. And so that was the reason I didn't have an operation. I've been doing pretty good. That little scooter there cost $1,200. And an operation is $25,000, $50,000. So I'm getting by. Now, I'm telling you all of this because at your age, I didn't think I would amount to anything. And it was a problem because my daddy wanted me to be a dentist. He was a dentist. And I knew I couldn't be a dentist. I knew how to do everything he did. I did all of his lab work for him. But I didn't want to be anything that was in an office that had one room. You know, I wanted to be out, and I didn't know what. But that's the way I lived my early life. Now, something happened when I finished Howard University. I graduated, oh, thank you, Lordy. You know, you have magna cum laude and super cum laude and cum laude. I finished, oh, thank you, Lordy. And I had a diploma from a great university, but I really didn't know anything. I didn't think that I knew anything. Really, what I learned was that just like my neighborhood was mostly European and black, Howard University had people coming from everywhere. Jamaica, plenty of Jamaicans, Nigeria, and my granddaughter just married a Nigerian, and I told her, I said, now, I've never met a dumb Nigerian, but I met a whole lot of slick ones. So you be careful and be good, see, and you all have an opportunity to work out a very good marriage. But it's not automatic when you grow up in two completely different cultures and have different goals and different family patterns. But in this day and age, everybody's going to marry somebody. You can't marry the boy next door anymore or the girl next door. Because the world, I mean, it's like we've all been shaken up. And to get along with almost anybody, you got to learn to do some things different. And that's sort of what makes life interesting. Now, I think the key to my success was that I knew I didn't know anything. And I figured I had to learn everything, every day. I had to figure it out anew. And where I came to that conclusion was coming back from Howard University. It was segregated then. We couldn't go in any hotel. There wasn't a hotel really between Washington and New Orleans, my home, that would run a room to us. So we stopped at a school, and my parents were at the conference, and the school was at the base of Kings Mountain, North Carolina. And I didn't want to go into the meetings, and I was frustrated because I had a diploma and I was dumb. And that's the way I figured it. So I started doing what I do most of the time when I'm frustrated. I go for a run or a swim or something to get tired that I can sleep. And so I went for a run. Well, you're running downhill, and that means you're running too fast. But I was frustrated and didn't pay any attention to it, and all of a sudden, I get to the bottom of the mountain, and instead of stopping to rest, I decided I'm gonna run to the top. And so I keep on running until I get to the top, and by the time I get to the top, I'm all but blacked out. Because I couldn't breathe, and I didn't have any water to drink. And so it took me a little while to come together, but while I was coming together, something happened to me. And it wasn't that anything around me changed, but something inside me changed. Because the clouds look different now. The trees look different. There were sunflowers growing in a field. They just seemed to jump out at you. The cows looked beautiful. See, everything just looked like it was supposed to look. And it hit me. Whoever made all of this also made me. And if the cows have a purpose, and if the trees have a purpose, see, there must be something. Whoever made all this didn't make everything with a purpose except me. He put me together for a purpose, a reason. There was something I could do in this world that nobody else could do. And that was ridiculous just to say that. But that's the way my life has been. I went home and decided that I wasn't going to get married, and I tried to get my fraternity pin back from the girl who had it, and she was keeping it. She kept it to her death. Never gave it back to me, even though she married somebody else and had 5 children. But she didn't want to go south because she didn't know segregation in Washington. And for some reason, I had decided that I wanted to stay in the South. And so I go home, and my church has got a new minister. And he had just graduated from Yale, and he was very smart. But he was from the North. And he'd never been in the South before, and he was supposed to be going over in Texas to speak at a youth conference. And he said, look, I'm not used to driving around the South. Can you ride with me? And I said, sure. Well, again, I was thinking I was going to go, he said, it's near San Antonio. Well, my roommate in college was from San Antonio. I said, he's calling me to San Antonio. Well, if I'd gone to San Antonio with him, I'd have partied for a week. And come back, pick up the preacher, and then come on back, and I didn't know what was next. But I got out there in the woods, and I didn't see anybody. In the first place, I didn't see anybody black from the time we left Houston till the time we got up in the panhandle of Texas. And so he was nervous, and he was making me nervous. And we get to this conference. This is 1951 now. That's a long time ago. Everybody in the whole neighborhood, everybody I could see, except my preacher, was white. And then everybody started to come up to me telling me, you know, if my parents knew I was with black people, they would probably disown me and put me out of the house. I said, well, why did you come? They said, because I believe, I think that this is something that Jesus would have me do. I said, oh, I never heard that line before. I never heard people who were willing to stand up to their families because of Jesus. And yet they seemed very sincere, and all of them wanted to do something to make the world better. They wanted to be missionaries here and missionaries there. I never thought about anything like that. But just being there, but then coming down from that mountain in North Carolina, I said, there's something that I can do that nobody else can do. Well, I get to this conference, and there are only 2 black folk there, and they wanted to have a program nationwide, and they wanted to have a different a representative in each state. And they didn't want it to be all white. And so they look around, and I'm the only one available, not black, that's black. And so everybody started looking at me, and I said, okay, I got just 6 months. I can do that. I'll learn something. And so I volunteer. I get into a group in Indiana. I'm the only person black. They assigned me to Connecticut. And I get to the place, council of churches, and they know I'm coming. They have a desk for me, but nobody figured out where I was going to live. So they didn't have, here I am again, the only black one in the room, and they didn't have a place for me to stay. So somebody thought of this Hartford Seminary. Well, I didn't know what a seminary was. I'd never been to one. They called them up and asked if they had an extra room, and they said they had extra room and they'd be glad for me to be a guest. So I go there, and lo and behold, it's a nice place. And everything I got to do is at the afternoon, after 3 o'clock. And so I said, maybe I should walk into, well, I did. I just wandered into the dean's office and said, you know, I'm working as a volunteer for the church, and I don't really know that much about the Bible, and I went to Sunday school and I've read the Bible, but can I sit in on a couple of classes? And he said, if you can sit in on 3, I can give you a scholarship. So here I am. I walked someplace I'd never heard of before, and I walked in a door that I'd never been in before, and the man says, yeah, I'll give you a scholarship. See? And then when my grades came, he called me back, and he said, you know, if we had seen your grades before we saw you, we would have assumed that you weren't smart enough to do this work. But you're doing very, very well, and just keep on, and you can keep the scholarship as long as you want to. So I'm sitting there not knowing what I'm doing, and things just fall together. Now, that's the way my life has been. I got ready at in the first year. I'm still thinking about the Olympics, so I signed up to go to the with the Pioneer Track Club in New York, and I have a job at a settlement house in Harlem, working with young people. And this preacher calls me up, and he says, I need you to go to Alabama. And I said, well, I've already signed up and set to go to New York. He said, everybody wants to go to New York. He said, but nobody wants to go to Alabama. He said, if you don't go to New York, everything's going to go on that would have gone on even if you'd gone. But if you don't go to Alabama, it'll make a big difference to those people down there. We'll probably lose a church, and we just need somebody to hold things together for the summer. Well, how you gonna say no to the preacher? He sends me down on this little, I'm choosing between New York and Marion, Alabama. Well, Marion, Alabama is 3,000. They got more than 3,000 people in most blocks in New York. And I go there, but I drive up, don't see anybody, knock on the door, they let me in, and I go in this house, this nice lady, and she knows that I'm coming, and she asked me to sit down. So I go in and I sit down, and I look at the table, and and there's a Bible sitting on the edge of the table. So I open the Bible, a new Bible, but it's underlined. And I said, who reads the Bible? And he said, oh, my daughter took a course in New Testament nonviolence. And I had never heard of nonviolence. So I said, where am I? I'm way out in the middle of the country. Now, let me tell you that little girl I didn't know. But there were two other little girls that went to that same high school. And one of them's name was Coretta King. And the other's name was Juanita Abernathy. And this girl's name was Jean Childs. See? And I didn't know anything about any of them. Julian Bond's father wrote a whole PhD dissertation on that one little school because it had sent so many smart people to so many places around the country. And, but back to this girl, because I look up and there's a basketball letter. And I said, who plays basketball? Your son on basketball? Which one of your boys play basketball? I said, no, this is my baby daughter. She's the basketball player too. I said, a girl who plays basketball and reads the Bible? Damn. And then I look up again, and there's a senior life-saving certificate. Well, I told you I was on the swimming team, and not many black people had, because there wasn't no swimming pool around there, but where she went to school, it was required that she take swimming, and she was good at it, and she went on and got a life-saving certificate. So here's a girl that reads the Bible, plays basketball, and swims, and I decided that the Lord sent me there to marry this woman. I still haven't seen her. It took a while, but I'm saying that that's the way everything in my life has happened. I'll go where I'm supposed to go, and something happens that I can't count on. I was in New York and had a job after finishing seminary, and they called me up and wanted me to come down to Thomasville, Georgia. And Thomasville, Georgia, John Wesley Dobbs, which is Maynard Jackson's grandfather, needed somebody to run a voter registration drive in Thomasville. So he asked me would I run the voter registration drive. And one thing leads to the next. And before you know it, I'm writing letters. I wander into Martin Luther King's office, and his secretary, I said, is there anything I can do to help? And she said, well, you know, he's got a whole stack of mail, and people write him from all over the world, and he doesn't have anybody to help him with his mail. So I said, well, I'll try. And she gave me a great big egg crate packed with letters. And so for the first few weeks, all I did was stay up at night and write letters. Now, we've come from nowhere to sitting at the desk with Martin Luther King. And he doesn't even know my name yet. You know? And so it's the way things happen in life if you follow what's inside. And so what I've been trying to tell you is that I think God has a plan for everybody. And nobody's life is just here by accident. If it is an accident, it's a divine accident. It's an accident that leads you where you can live a better life. And that's what this leadership stuff is all about. It's not following your own instincts only, but it's doing the best that you can with whatever you got, wherever you land. And I was, just sitting around minding my own business. And Jimmy Carter calls me up and he wants to send me to the UN to be an ambassador. But before that, I was trying to find, after Dr. King was killed, I was trying to find some way to raise some money to keep SDLC going. And I go ask Harry Belafonte for his help. And he ignores me and turns around and calls his wife and says, see if you can find a free weekend. We're going to have a fundraiser. And I said, oh, he's going to help us raise some money, good. And when his wife says, what's it for? He said, Andy's running for Congress. I said, me? Why me? I said, I'm talking about everybody else who was talking about going. He said, yeah, but you're ready to run, and we're ready to help you. And so that led to Congress. And the reason I was at the place where this hotel started was that I'm a new member of Congress. With Sam Nunn is new in the Senate, and I'm new in the Congress. And of all the people in the Congress, they picked the two of us to represent the United States in Japan. And so we got to know Japan, and we got to know people. And so later on, when I went back, I knew my way around Japan. I had learned to like Japanese food. And so when I went to a reception, they introduced me to the president of the Nikko Hotel, who was also the president of Nippon Airlines. And the first thing I say to him, like I was sent there to say it, I hope you will put one of your hotels in my city. We have one of the world's fastest growing airports, and in one day it's going to be the busiest in the world. And we need Japan Airlines flying in there. You need to work something out with Delta. But we have 2 or 3 Japanese factories already going up in Georgia, and there probably will be 15 or 20 before long. And we need a Nikko hotel. It didn't take but 2 months. They found somebody to find this little piece of land, and this was vacant. This whole corner was vacant. And next thing I know, here's a hotel. And it used to have, it used to be a restaurant in there, and that rock wall behind it makes it one of the prettiest lobbies anywhere I've ever been. And it used to be a Japanese restaurant down there at first. But look at this city now. They thought we couldn't have one black mayor. We've now had 9. We thought that mayors could be only boys. Now we've had 2 wonderful, powerful, at least 2 mayors. Shirley Franklin and Keisha Lance Bottoms. And this is sort of a wonder city. I wonder what's going to happen next. And I wonder what you're going to do next. And I wonder what plan God Almighty has for each and every one of you. And I turned 91. I'm thinking 96, because she said her mom was 96, And I'm thinking to myself, I got to catch her mama. And that means I got to kind of do something right. And, you know, keep on keeping on. Now, all of this is what Tommy Dortch was thinking about when he started inviting young people together from all over the city and later all over the South. And I mean, at times we've had as many as 300 and 400 before the virus and all of the disruption in life. But that's why we think you ought to be here, because I want to tell you that, one, God put you on this earth for some purpose. And I don't know what it is, and maybe you don't know what it is. You can't know what it is. Because it might not even exist yet. When I first came to Atlanta, I flew in here from Thomasville in a DC-3. You know what that is? A little bitty airline with two propellers on it. And it didn't hold but about as many people as we got in this room. And it didn't go very fast. And the whole airport wasn't much bigger than this room. It was a Quonset hut. And it had the little counters, and you couldn't go to get anything to eat. You'd get, they had, it lived on, I mean, you could put money in a machine and get something out to eat. There were no restaurants. And that was the Atlanta airport. Now it is the busiest in the world. And last year, that airport made $66 billion. And it created over 1 million jobs around here. And it's run by people just like you. None of them ever thought that they would even be working at an airport, much less running it. And but this is about the 9th mayor, and we've probably raised people from all over. The present director of the airport is from Guyana. That's down just below Jamaica. And he came here, became a citizen, joined the Air Force, ended up being trained in airport management, and evolved into our, director. And I went up there to see how things were going. And the people running the airport look just like you, except that there were only 3 men. And there were 7 women. And all of them happened to be cute and smart. And they all brown. And they all sharp. And everything you ask, somebody gives you an answer just like that. So that this whole thing, the last time they counted, I think we had 110 million people. That's almost as many people as in the United States coming through this airport every year. And that was thought up down there in City Hall by people who were thinking about and dreaming about airports when they were your age. So you got a big world ahead of you. And you don't have to figure out what you're gonna do. All you have to do is do the best you can with anything you get an opportunity to do today. And then when you wake up tomorrow, do the same thing tomorrow. And you'd be surprised to learn how quick it'll be before you will be somebody that other people know and other people will look up forward to meeting, and people want to know what you have to say about something. See, and if it's just your own children. But then you're growing them to be something special. And that's what this city is. And that's what this organization is. I'll be glad to answer any questions you got right quick. I won't be that long.
Okay. How is it to meet?
Stand up and tell me who you are right quick.
Hello, my name is Demai Trey. I'm a sophomore attending Texas Southern University. I'm an English major, journalism minor. So my question to you was, how was it meeting Nina Simone? And like just
Say slow.
Oh, I said, how was it meeting Nina Simone?
Meeting what?
Nina Simone?
Oh, I didn't really, well, I heard her at Pascal's. Pascal's used to have the carousel used to be right next to the restaurant on Martin Luther King. And she came and I met her, but I didn't spend any time with her. I spent more time with Lena Horne because she did a benefit for my campaign. And Harry Belafonte, I got to know pretty well because he stuck with Dr. King from the time he started in Montgomery until long after his death. Because after Dr. King's death, he started helping me out. And like when he told me that I was going to run for Congress, I said, but Harry, I don't know nothing about Congress. He said, none of them else up there know anything about it. And he said, that's why we're sending you, so you can find out, come back and help us do right. And I said, but I don't have any money. See, I don't even know where my salary is coming from. I don't know where my rent is coming from. And he said, isn't your wife a teacher? I said, yeah. He said, she's got a master's degree, doesn't she? I said, yeah. He said, she can take care of you till you figure it out. Well, and then he told me, he said, you just think about it, and I'll have some of my friends call you. And then somebody calls me the next day and said, you Andrew Young? I said, yeah. He said, are you crazy? He didn't say, are you crazy? You know how he put it. I said, well, I don't know, maybe. He said, well, if you're crazy enough to try to run for Congress in Georgia, I'm crazy enough to try to help you. And I said, what are you going to do? And he said, what would you do if Isaac Hayes and Bill Cosby came to town? I said, we could rent a baseball field, stadium in Philadelphia. And he said, who runs the baseball stadium? It just so happened I knew the person who was the manager of the Braves stadium. And I gave him the number, and then 2 weeks later, there's signs up where Bill Cosby and Isaac Hayes are coming to town. And Isaac Hayes had just written Shaft. You know, and Bill Cosby was on NBC. And we had 30,000 people at the baseball stadium in the rain.
Nice to meet you. My name is Faith Thorpe. I'm a rising junior. I will be an industrial systems engineer at North Carolina.
You will be what?
An industrial systems engineer,
Okay.
graduating from North Carolina A&T. And I wanted to ask you, what is one of the greatest lessons you've learned and from who?
Well, let me correct you.
Okay.
And forgive me, but it's true about everybody that I'm old and I'm slightly hard of hearing, but you all are not speaking as clearly as you can. And you almost have to assume that everybody's hard of hearing, because it's really hard to understand what's happening. It's sort of like, I read a book one time. It said, listening with the third ear. See, so you not only want to hear the sounds that are coming in your ears, but you want to hear the emotion and the feeling that's coming from their heart to your heart. So when you listen with that third ear, then everybody understands better. And I forgot what you asked because I had a hard time hearing it.
Would you like
But
me
that's my problem.
Would you like me to try again?
That's right.
My name is Faith Thorpe. I'm a junior at North Carolina A&T University. I will be an industrial systems engineer. I wanted to ask you, what is one of the greatest lessons you've learned and from who?
I think from my daddy and Jesse Owens. See, don't get mad, get smart. I don't know that anybody has ever seen me mad. You know, and I went to South Africa when Nelson Mandela was in jail. And all of the people at the U.S. Embassy were white. And they didn't want me to go talk to the white folks in South Africa. They said, no, we don't have anything to do with them. I said, yeah, but they run in the country. They're the ones that got my friends in jail. See? We want them to be flying into Atlanta soon. But they advised me not to mess with this man because he was so mean and ruthless. And I said, do you have his phone number? And they said, yeah. I said, let me call him and see for myself. And so I picked up the phone and called him. And he's one of those that had Nelson Mandela in jail for 30 years, 34 years. And I said, you can't do anything but put me in jail too. But since I'm a U.S. government official, he'd like to put me in jail. So I called him up and said hello and asked if I could come by and talk to him. And that was that. He was as shaken up as I was, but I was used to talking to people like him. And he wasn't used to people talking to people like me. The first question he asked let me know that he knew about Atlanta and he knew about me before I got there. Because he didn't say hello, he didn't say good morning. He said, why did white people vote for you? I said, what? Oh, I said, you mean for Congress? Of course. I said, well, I don't know. I've been working with them and we had some problems in the city and we had a number of strikes and I was helping them to solve some of the labor problems and race problems, and they figured I'd be good in Congress. All they said was, and I grunted. Then he said, how much of the marriage you have? how many white folks marry black folks? I said, a few. I don't know how many. I said, there are one or two in my church, and there are probably some integrated couples in the university systems around, but I said, there's no mass so far. And the next thing he said was, how long do you think we have before the bloodbath? And I said, what bloodbath? And he said, surely one of these days soon, these black people are going to rise up and kill us all. And I said, I don't think so. The truth of it is, I've been more worried about the black people killing each other, because that's what's happening in South Africa now. They divided it up. They got integrated on race, but they still divided on tribes. And they're not getting along very well. But I didn't say all of that. But I said, but that's why President Carter asked me to come and talk to you. I said, President Carter grew up in Georgia in an area that was 80% black. See? And all his friends were black. His mother was a nurse, and his daddy ran a peanut farm. And so he has lived all his life in a community that's majority black. And he asked me to ask you, to tell you, that if you are interested in having black people and white people run this country together and have a multiracial democracy, that he would, as President of the United States, work hand in hand with you and help you all learn to live and work together. It was that simple. But you have to, you kind of have to believe that somebody's putting something in your head and in your heart at the same time. And if you can get it together and get it out, other people will make sense of it.
Thank you.
My name is Cameron Cannon. I'm an environmental engineering major at the University of Nebraska. I had a conference recently this last month coming down in the same city as April. We walked past your statue, so I had the privilege of telling a couple of my classmates about you and along with some of your initiatives. So with the foundation, well, first off, thank you for hosting all of this, but another one of your goals is like your duckweed project with like sustainability and feeding our rising population. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and how that's going on?
Yeah. The second largest food exporter to the United States is a little country called Holland, or the Netherlands. And the Netherlands is about the size of Connecticut. It's one of our smallest states. And that's one of the smallest countries in Europe. But they grow more food than anybody except the United States. And they grow it most of the time in water. Excuse me. Oh. Hello? Yes, sir.
I'm here.
Okay, I saw you. Come on in and come to the front table up and eat a piece of cake or something. The front table on your right.
All right, you know you got to be home by 2, right?
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I got it.
Okay. That's, I have a Zoom call at 2 o'clock. What was I asking, Nancy?
The duckweed and the Andrew Foundation.
Oh, yeah. There are 3 things. That one is aquaponics. And we we sprinkle our soil with water, and then it evaporates up quickly. By growing food in water and cycling it around, and then you keep the same water in tanks filled with fish. So the fish, you feed the fish something we found out in the woods, in the swamps, called duckweed, and it's what the ducks eat when they're flying south. They can see this little real bright green, leaves growing in the water. And we put those two together, and you can grow a head of lettuce in 6 to 7 weeks, or you can grow a stalk of spinach. And we have it over at the YMCA. The storm blew off the roof of our place at the Y. But we're building a thing we got 12 acres of land right out here on Highway 75, just 10 minutes south of the airport. Now, our foundation is just really 5 or 6 people, and we don't have much money. So the reason we got somebody to give us some money to buy the land, and we're planning to grow the food there, but we're only going to do 2 or 3 acres first, because the point of it is it's going to be very expensive to do it here in Atlanta. But my friends, I had 4 women, friends of mine, at my house yesterday, because their grandchildren are graduating and they're all from Nigeria. Well, Nigeria is going to have almost 1 billion people by 2050, and they're almost as big as the United States now. They're getting close to 300 million people. And it's hot. It's more like it is down here, but they're going to run out of food if they don't learn how to fix it differently. And so we're trying to get this up, they're saying by my next birthday, and have it operating, because they have oil. They have good schools, good engineers. They can do this very easily. That's one thing. The other thing is I grew up in New Orleans, and everything we've done here when I was mayor, we did without money. We built that airport with no money. We went to Wall Street and we borrowed money, and it's probably closer to $20 billion now. But there's no taxpayer money in the airport. And everybody gets paid, because we borrowed money and then we pay it back every month. Until now we've generated close to $20 billion. Now, that's what we're trying to get people to learn how to do in poor countries. If you create the food, right before you're going to get it to market, and sell it, you pay off your debts. That's the way most business works. So then the third thing, the second thing is that there are 200 cities between New Orleans and Minneapolis on the Mississippi River. And they all need technology and money, because they have to manage the Mississippi River. And the Mississippi River sometimes is too high, sometimes it's too low, but it's the lifeblood of this nation. And so we're working with the Dutch and the Corps of Engineers, and all we have done is be around, dreaming with people and agitating and putting people together who don't know each other until we made it work.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, we're gonna have to cut the questions because we're respectful of his time and he's gotta get to his Zoom. But, and also we wanna do pictures, okay, so, if Ambassador will give us a closing.
The closing is that, this is the first day of the rest of your life. And, you're gonna meet a lot of people around here that, if you take your time, you might think they're crazy. The man who runs this hotel said that I walked into a place and asked the owner of the hotel to build a hotel here. That sounds crazy, but it happened. You know, it happened. And the thing that John Portman, who designed the downtown Hyatt, was a poor boy who used to sell newspapers downtown and deliver them on a bicycle. See? And he got into Georgia Tech architecture, and he always dreamed about downtown. And one of his assignments at Georgia Tech was to build a senior citizen high-rise. Well, when he went to see the senior citizens, they didn't want to get in any building. They wanted to be on their front porch where they could see, talk to their neighbors, and gossip all day long. See? Well, that's why the Hyatt, when you look at the Hyatt, that's why the banisters are on the inside. So people, when he built it in college at Georgia Tech, he built it so that women could put their own little rocking chairs out and they could talk to the women across the hall, just like they talk to the women across the street, all the men. And so that almost everything here has a story, but the story comes from ordinary people who were ordinary when they got here. But they became extraordinary as they believed and as they were willing to trust. That's the one thing I'd like for you to remember, and that's all. Just when you're worried and when you're confused, don't look up, don't look down, look inside. So there's something, the Bible calls it a still small voice that leads you where you need to be going. And you'll be all right. In fact, you will be wonderful because everybody here is going to give you something that you'll be able to do something with when you get to your next step. Okay?
All right.